It's my pleasure to welcome you to this special event co-hosted by Ludo Studio, Screen Australia and Screen Queensland. And know that whether you're enjoying this event in the comfort of our wonderful boardroom or your office or living room through the powers of live streaming, that you are
watching it in Times Square.
In Times Square, yeah. We're trying for a couple. I knew you'd start talking and it'd calm me down. No. That's good. The live streaming thing's fun for me as well. That you're in for a treat. Andrew Ellard comes to us from the UK, where he has built an enviable career as a script editor on hit comedy shows including The IT Crowd, Red Dwarf, Miranda, and Count Arthur Strong. Daley Pearson comes to us from a little closer to home, here in Brisbane, where, as a co-founder of Ludo Studio, he has created, written, and directed the comedy drama series The Strange Calls, and the Emmy Award Calls. And the Emmy Award-winning comedy.
It's about strange always.
It's just strange, exactly. And the Emmy Award-winning comedy. Now, do I say this hash? I always call it 7 days later, but do you say the hashtag or do you just imply it?
A series that hasn't got a second season yet.
Right, okay, we can leave that alone then. Obviously, a bit of something there. We'll leave that one right alone. The Strange Calls is currently being remade for the US at 20th Century Fox and NBC Universal, while Daley and the team at Ludo continue to develop a slate of projects, including the animated comedy series The Strange Chores.
That's right.
Thank you. For ABC3, The Sketchy Show for Cartoon Network, and an original comedy feature, E.T. and Me, with Sacha Baron Cohen's US production company.
Yeah.
Daley and Andrew here this evening to discuss the do's and don'ts of comedy writing for half hour.
Andrew is here.
Sorry?
Andrew is here.
Andrew,
I don't have much on that.
So it's anticipation of a relevant, important, and who knows, maybe even funny conversation that I hand you over to the people who will speak a lot better than I do. Please make them welcome.
Cool. Thanks. I always feel like I could introduce you to everyone who's here, but it's probably a mix of like...
Do you know them all individually? Can you?
Almost, but it's mostly a mix of like people who are running their own companies and have done their own shows. And
So they're better than I am, essentially, is what
a lot. And then there's also a lot of story producers as well who are running writers' rooms at the moment, which we were talking about, and also probably first and second time writers of TV features and probably being part of writers' rooms.
But on the internet, it's weird perverts who really want to look at a fat bloke talk about comedy.
Yeah.
That's their thing.
Oh, everybody's masturbating now. I'm sorry. We actually just came from a story today, but that will be good in some ways. I just want to introduce Andrew with a few quotes that aren't mine. I found Andrew through something he does called tweet notes, which are amazing. You should check out his Twitter, Ellard, Andrew Ellard on Twitter. Where
what the hell was that? Eldorant. It's a planet in Star Wars.
Yeah, I got
Ellardant.
Ellardant. Oh, sorry.
Ellardant.
And that's how I found Andrew, where I just began reading. Basically, he tweets constructive things about films, TV that have just come out, usually waiting a week so everyone's not furious. And it's brilliant. It's really brilliant. I learned a lot from that as well as... Anyway, I'll get to that. I just want to read a few of these quotes from people. This is Graham Linehan, who I love, did Father Ted, IT Crowd, Count Arthur, really brilliant stuff. And this is about Andrew saying he's probably the reason this series... I'm going to do it in an English accent.
Don't do the accent.
He's probably the reason this series of the IT Crowd is so strong. The quality of the series as a whole has taken a major step forward, and that's because of Andrew Ellard's notes. Andrew, the writing IT Crowd was much more enjoyable than it usually is because Andrew's involvement. It leads to better results. He also wished that you came as an app. This is Doug Ellard from Red Dwarf. I'm yet to meet anyone who writes better, more incisive script notes than Andrew. He has no bigger fan. One of my favourite people, Julia Davis, Nighty Night. Is anyone a massive fan of that? She's just done Camp for Channel 4. Like, really great. She says, I've worked with Andrew on a couple of projects now, and his great skills and enthusiasm, his desire to facilitate your vision, and his ability to see the wood when you're lost up a tree. I could keep going, and I might even keep going, but he's just...
Don't keep going. It's really getting kind of uncomfortable.
He's great. But Andrew also writes as well, so it'll be a bit of a blurring from how Andrew started script editing to writing now, his own series for Channel 4. And I think that's really cool because we'll be getting a bit of an insight as a creative writer as well, on top of just script editing. But I wanted to start by saying it's so cool to have you here for the last 2 weeks.
It is cool for you to have me here.
It is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we went to karaoke the other night. You loved it.
Oh no, that's not what.
And I just wanted to start by asking, like, I know this, but asking how you started, because I think it would be lovely to know. There's a lot of sort of being proactive in Australia, because we are in the corner of the world. I think your story is really, especially inspirational about how you sort of started.
Well, I got my breaks by being a geek about television, which is kind of, you know, I feel richly deserved. I annoyed people until they hired me.
But you didn't.
Well, no,
really
actually
didn't.
that's true. Is I failed to annoy them, which was kind of the good thing. So I was working for nobody. I'd finished university and I was signing on, and I didn't have a career, I didn't have a plan, I didn't have anything. And the guys who make Red Dwarf, the production company there, were looking for somebody to write content for the Red Dwarf website. Because they were just about to launch it, and it needed someone who could write news every week, articles every week, do interviews and all that kind of stuff, but who knew the show well enough.
Yeah.
And I'd been doing the Red Dwarf fan club magazine, writing content for that, and so it seemed like, although that was an unpaid, volunteer, I'm just a fan who wants to get his voice out there and talk about my favourite show.
And what sort of stuff was it that you were writing?
I was doing everything. I was doing
it
everything from articles and interviews to fan fiction, and
right. So there was an element of
there was a little bit of
writing
creative, and a lot of very bad jokes. So they hired me.
And then they saw that, the creators.
I'd been involved with I'd kind of communicated with the production company a bit, because you need photos for the fan club magazine, and the fan club is unpaid, but it was supported by them, so they would help you out with photos and access to people and all that kind of stuff. So I was in the office working on the website every week. Now, I don't do the internet. At that time, I had no idea how a website even worked.
Well, I was about to interrupt
wanted
annoyingly that it's almost like multi-platform that you were doing before the internet.
God, I mean, it was 2000. So,
I know it probably sounds a bit wanky, but that's sort of what you're doing. You're sort of doing stuff that existed outside the TV plus.
I guess, yeah. I mean, we got kind of more interested in kind of trying to do kind of fictionally bits and pieces, and kind of. But the nature of Red Dwarf is that Doug Naylor's sort of across anything that's fictional and scripted and whatever. So you had very limited parameters for like you couldn't release 5 new Red Dwarf novels. That wasn't part of the remit. But I was working in the office while the Red Dwarf feature film was in development, so they had scripts of that going through. And Doug kind of tapped me aside one day and said, would you take a look at it, just give me a sort of fan's perspective on this? And I sent him a load of thoughts back, and I got this email back saying, these are the best notes I've ever had. And it turns out giving notes is
from
a
the
thing.
Creator, Red Dwarf creator,
And so number one, you kind of blush, and number two, you go, Jesus, and I was being nice about some of that stuff. Maybe I should tell him what I really thought about those.
Right.
Because the script had to fulfill an awful lot of difficult things, because being an adaptation of a TV show is incredibly tough. The TV show is built to be self-replicating, whereas a movie's supposed to pay off at the end and finish in a useful and triumphant fashion. But I sent these kind of these notes, not knowing that giving notes to writers was a job, was a thing anybody. So I just kind of went, this you could totally pay this off if you did this thing, or wouldn't it be great if these guys came from this angle rather than. And he started recommending me to me. He recommended me to kind of Paul Jackson at ITV and stuff. Wow. And suddenly I was being touted around as like, oh, you want to get his thoughts on this before you move too far.
And
ahead.
I know that once you went to ITV, you got put in charge of the sort of their stuff that was in production to sort of...
Well, not in charge. That implies I had any authority at all.
Sorry, maybe it's the wrong word, but you were basically sort of creatively spell checking their stuff before they pressed record on the
Well, what happened was
cameras.
they had a load of stuff in production. Paul Jackson was trying at that time to get a load of comedy out of ITV.
And Paul Jackson was the head of comedy
and former Red Dwarf producer, and he produced the young ones and stuff. Like, Paul's a legend of British telly comedy, and quite rightly so. But they were trying to get ITV to be an appealing place to bring comedy again, because at that time they weren't really making much of anything. And so he was going to Ben Elton and Guy Jenkin and Jonathan Harvey and all these brilliant writers trying to make the channel seem appealing. And the worst thing about a channel, I imagine you all know, is the notes that make you want to die. Is the feedback where you go, well, this isn't the show, this isn't the thing we're trying to make. I have no idea what thing they think we're trying to make, but it ain't this. Yes. Whereas you get notes from me, and as you know, my ethos is, my job is to get you to the best version of the thing you're already trying to write. It's not to come in and say what I think the show should be.
Which is amazing.
And that philosophy kind of applied. So the ITV notes, I was doing notes for writers, and they were take it or leave it. You don't have to listen to him. It might be useful, it might be not. So it was like a free gift with purchase. If you get your series commissioned, you get notes from Andrew Ellard. Rather than from us, where we tell you we hate it and we want to change everything. It was to make it more appealing.
Were you not to get too deep into it at the start, but were you put in charge of sort of being the Darth Vader of Emperor's Notes? Were you put in charge of sort of communicating some of that?
No, not at all.
So
I wasn't.
It was
only me. It was just raw responses to the scripts direct to them.
Okay.
I was never a filterer of notes. You know, I have this thing about script editor. The title script editor means different things on different shows, that it can mean that you're a contributor, that you actually wrote some of it, and really it was more that, but they credit you as script editor, or that you might have been the person who did ferry that practical stuff backwards and forwards. The producers have notes, the channel has notes, and all of that gets filtered back. I was never those kinds of script editor. My thing was always a very raw response to, here's the script, I went through it with a pen at the time, but I sat and thought about it for a few hours afterwards, and then whatever comes out after that is what I send back to you.
So you went. So that was like writing pretty much fan fiction and doing fanny nerdy stuff.
I'll tell you what else
Red
I was
Dwarf.
doing. I was doing that for Red Dwarf, but also I'd written online some reviews of the IT Crowd.
Before the Channel 4 gig?
No, during the ITV gig, while I was doing the ITV gig, which was a freelance thing that I was doing. In fact, that was when I went freelance, was when I got the ITV gig.
And then you started doing, plus your ITV job, you started writing extracurricular notes just for the internet?
Well, there was the third series, the IT Crowd, went out, and I was writing appalling review blogs on a site that was called Noise to Signal, which is now defunct, but all the content is still there. And we reviewed the third series of the IT Crowd, and I did some of those. And Graham got in touch. Graham sent an email saying, oh my God, I mean, if you'd been there before we'd made this show, we could have fixed all of these things. Because rather than those reviews that say, I mean, I don't know what he thinks, this is funny, is this funny, this isn't comedy. You know those reviews that you just go, well, you were never going to like it. Or even worse, oh, it just isn't for you. And that's fine, by the way. Not everything can be for everybody. But my stuff was like, damn it, you almost nailed that, and then it swerved in the wrong direction. Or
you could see where they were going, and you took a misstep here.
Predictability was a problem, or too much unpredictable, or something wasn't, you know, and if you had just tuned that in. And he did. I figured, well, you know what? If he's got my email address, he's seen my website, which says script editor for TV shows. So he knows what I do for a living. So I cheekily kind of went back. Well, look, you know, I'm available for the following series if you would like to give it some consideration. He did. He hired me. And he's been sort of a champion ever since for like telling people that I'm not an idiot and worth hiring.
And I was going to jump to a question about working with somebody like that, because I would assume that, you know, these Julia Davis, Graham, they don't need anything.
Well, I mean,
like you would assume that they don't need anything.
They're functioning geniuses already.
Like where is your job on that?
Well, different people have different gaps. Like Graham's very much, you know, grab this idea, and fall in love with a series of ideas, and then find a way to fuse them and marry them and make them flow properly and fit together.
And I assume he's like, in case anyone, I assume his sort of role would be showrunner of those shows.
Oh, absolutely.
He's writing, directing.
Graham Linehan owns the stuff that he makes.
So you're working not so much with a writer there. You're working with a overall showrunner.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's not. It's not like he's running other writers particularly,
Just
although
him.
he co-writes Count Arthur and co-wrote Father Ted. But the first drafts I get tend to be incredibly short. Like they can be 18 or 20 pages sometimes, where it's just I got the ideas down in sort of the order I want. And you'll feed back on like, well, this doesn't really fit with that, and that doesn't pay off where that thing. But this sets up a really huge question that you're not answering. But imagine if you did, because look at what that would do. And some of my best times working in telly have been when Graham phones me excited, having read the notes and gone through the script. And so I go, I've got a brand new idea, but it is sort of the idea we were already talking about. And then on the phone we'll just go bang, 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 bang. So Arthur does this, and then he goes here, and the thing. But the nice thing is that pays off that, and then he's laughing because he's got this thing going on. And it's such a raw energy thing of like this. We know the jokes will be funny because it's Graham Linehan. The jokes are going to be funny when we get there. Him and Steve Daley are writing great stuff for Count Arthur. But But initially, just that punch of story, which is why I've gotten obsessed, as you know, I've gotten obsessed with the idea of the anecdote test.
Yeah.
Like, can you tell the story that you're about to be pitching, that you're going to be making as an anecdote? Because if you fill it with, and then, and he sort of goes there and thinks about that for a while, like that's not an exciting next step. Whereas if you've got a definite thing of like, Arthur really wants a kebab. He's desperate for a kebab, so he goes to the kebab shop, and the kebab is really rude to him. Like, it's based on this guy I met. The thing. So Arthur sort of actually kicks a thing, but actually that sets off a chain reaction, which causes that you can feel the energy of that stuff when it happens.
Yeah.
If you can tell the story of your half-hour sitcom to somebody else, and you'd find that really easily as well. Like if you watch somebody else's really good half-hour sitcom, that you can go and tell somebody about it, and the incidents are funny, the beats are funny.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do the jokes. You don't have to do the dialogue.
And like, so with somebody like that, I'd really love to know. Like it's sort of at a distance, it's just the back of a blockbuster video. But what is, like, you get it, you guys have sort of collaborated on something and then out comes this amazing episode. But what's like the kitchen sink, 12 midday, I'm getting an email, that's my second email. What's the process of you working, if you take someone like Graham with a writer, and maybe if you want to take him as an example or someone else, what's the sort of the teacup, kitchen sink process of when they give you something, what you give back?
Well, it depends on. It really does depend on the writer. So Graham likes to send me first drafts, really scrappy, punchy first drafts that are still figuring out their bits and pieces. So I get that through by email. And
that's the first time you've seen it. You wouldn't have sort of been.
Sometimes
you wouldn't have been pitched an episode to say, "I'm thinking of doing this," so you don't think this is crazy.
I said,
Here it is.
It depends on the writer, but Graham likes to send a draft. But that's because he and Steve have been working in a room for ages, so he's already had one person to kick it backwards and forwards with. It's a co-written show.
Yeah.
But you know, and on the IT credits, a bit more isolated. But yeah, that thing of sending you a punchy first draft that's scrappy but exciting and got all the fire and energy still in it, like, rather than it's been laboured and worked through and it's 15 pages too long and it's got all that brevity, that energy. Whereas if I do like chewing gum, which I don't think has really come over here yet.
Well, I think it's a little bit like the UK, from what we've been trying, a little bit like UK Please Like Me, where the first season, it's a great show, but not heaps of people watched it in Australia, but now it's on the top 10 list with like Game of Thrones in all these US magazines. I think it's getting quite insanely critically acclaimed, so I'm sure it will drift here in a couple of months.
Chewing Gum I did for E4, and it's by a young female black writer called Michaela Cole, who is just sort of the renaissance in human form. She's amazing. But she'd never written for TV when I came on that show. And so with that show, it was very much building the stories, first season, very much building the stories in the room with her. So she's got idea, I want to do this bit, and this bit. And it's like, all right, well, what that gives you is, and what that gives you is.
So your script editing / almost teaching form of sitcom.
Well, kind of, but not so much giving her that toolkit was part of it, but also just letting her know that, you know, you can throw these ideas at me and I'll bounce them back and give you the funhouse mirror reflections. Like, what if it was narrow? What if it was wide? What if it went over in that direction?
Which is the best way, like, we wrote something together, and that's the best way I could describe how great it was, that it was almost like, in terms of giving a sentence and you coming back with various verbs or nouns that would get the point across better.
Graham calls it the roadmap to the rewrite. Like, you know that you've got to rewrite, you know it needs fixing, you know it can be better, but you hadn't realised there's this really interesting route that you haven't taken. And it's not that I'm saying take that route, it's like, just so you know, you started here, from there, there's these 5 different interesting places you could visit on the road to where you're going. And it's like, but if I visit that place and then that place, and they start making those connections again. It's about firing up your energy to rewrite. The worst thing about notes can be that they suck the life out of you, that you get them and you go, well, I have no talent, I have no ability, and everyone has finally noticed. And instead of that, with a bit of luck, what you get from me is, oh, that's really cool, and you want to go back tomorrow night and start hammering away at it because you're re-inspired to reapproach it, as opposed to, this thing I've made will never be any good. The hope is that you're filled with an energy to go back and keep going.
So that's like, so the more experienced writers are that. So basically, you're giving them a hammer and nail. You're giving the hammer and nail and saying you need to go back to the wall, and this is the areas I would attack. But I imagine with maybe who's here, including myself, newer sitcom screenwriters, what are the sort of well, I would argue, but what are the hiccups you see there that are sort of common, like that you say, Yeah, what would be a commonality between the mistakes newer people make?
The brand new writers, there are a few things that you always get to see. Number one is that they think them and their mates hanging out is a much better sitcom than the rest of the world is going to think it is.
Yeah, and that bleeds into hopefully what you're going to go to, which I love what you're trying.
But there's things like, God knows, passive protagonists. This actually happens with stand-ups a lot as well, when stand-ups write half-hour sitcoms.
Yeah.
The nature of stand-up is to observe the world and to kind of look at how everything is. And, you tell the story about how you were in the supermarket, this guy did this ridiculous thing, can you even imagine?
Yeah.
That's not quite how sitcom functions. Sitcom functions the Larry David way, where you're like, I was the worst person in that conversation, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
Flaws about yourself. So a lot of the sitcoms you see coming in, the brand new writers who haven't done it before, whatever, they tend to write things happen to a character. I've got a regular everyman guy. He's a regular guy, but he suffers mishaps.
Which it feels like.
Yeah,
like, that's what it feels like to me. Like the world is
and if you care about,
to me.
if you care about and understand, like Blackadder, if you care about the character and understand him, it does feel like the Queen's being really awful, and that that you're subjectively kind of within that. But actually, Blackadder's venality, his selfishness, are the cause of most of his own problems.
Yeah.
Larry David is the cause of most problems. All the characters in Seinfeld are the cause of their problems. Fraser Crane's arrogance is the cause of his own problem. Over and over and over again, everyone in the IT crowd, everyone in Count Arthur,
Totally.
their own natures become the cause of story.
Totally.
And we were working on a thing this week where we kept having this conversation of like, but what if they get in a lift and the lift gets stuck?
Yeah.
If what they do is they sit there and wait quietly, then they're probably not a great sitcom lead. They're probably not that interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas if you know that they're like, hey, I can fix this lift, I'm actually pretty resourceful when I come to think about it.
Yeah.
Like if they're that guy, or if they're the screamer panicker, or if has everyone got food? I could look out. Are you all right? Do you want to sleep? We'll put you a section aside. There's a pooping corner. We're working it out.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Because I did that. I'm hopefully doing it less from chatting to you. Like that, it feels like the world happens to you. Like a while ago, maybe with the Strange Calls, the concept, or I talk about the X-Files. I was chatting about, like, I would say the X-Files is a great concept. That's a show. It's weird case files, and that's cool. That can last forever.
Yeah.
But it's leaving out the most important part, which is how the two characters weave in and out of that log line, and almost reactive to it.
Incredibly useful to have a guy who's going to believe it even if it may not be true, and the person who's not going to believe it even if it probably is true.
Yeah.
That just gives you reactions. That gives you scenes straight away.
And that's what I think, like in terms of early script writers, I think that's like a massive thing, that even when you realise it, like a swimming instructor, straight in your arm, even when you realise that's what you've got to do, you still manage to trip back into like story.
Particularly if you find a good concept, like if you have a really good idea, like almost a movie idea, and you try and build a sitcom out, you realise, what if that terrible thing happened to a regular guy? And actually, no, stop making him a regular guy.
What if that regular guy did a terrible thing?
What if that regular guy made those kinds of things happen? What if he's not that regular? What if actually he's,
which is that I know the South Park guys. There's some YouTube online with their but and therefore thing.
Oh yeah. Where there's the nature of the storytelling in South Park. The thing they fight against is don't say and then. It's always therefore or however. So there's something always that's either come out of the last scene or the last beat, or that is blocking the thing from happening that the guys are trying to achieve, which is just common sense, forward-moving narrative. Characters go after stuff, malcontent, sitcoms who are built from guys, and it's always guys, who are built out of characters who are basically okay with their life. I'm kind of all right, but my friends are quite wacky. No, your life should be not what you want it to be. The people who are happy, who are content, don't go out into the world and make more interesting stuff happen. They hang around and they be a bit whimsical and whatever. The guys who are disappointed with their status, who desperately want to be more than they are, like Leslie Knope is a triumph of forward moving. I'm going to make stuff happen in the world today. She wakes up every morning moving forwards.
Yeah. And so that's like, so what would you say is, I mean, I think you may have just said it, but what makes a great protagonist for a sitcom? What would you, and maybe you've just said it, which is somebody who makes stuff happen.
It's definitely stuff like that. It's also really useful to think about like the wants and needs of the character, and I know that's kind of
I love this.
It's a bit wanky and obvious, but it is broadly true. The characters who want things go after stuff, and generally speaking, the need is kind of the irony of them or the failing of them. So Basil Fawlty wants a bit of a quiet life. He wants to be aristocracy, but what he needs to do is be okay with people, because his contempt for other human beings and his desire for a quiet life mean he treats anyone who he thinks he can get away with it quite badly.
Yeah.
And actually his treating people quite badly tends to be what leads to the stories falling out of control. Yeah. That's true of basically everything. IT crowd is a constant, those are malcontents. They're not happy with their situation at all. And in Jen's case, like, she's not happy. She's in the basement and there's a push to be more than that and get out of it. Yeah. What she needs to realize is she's as weird as the other basement guys. She actually fits in here just fine. And as long as she's fighting her own status.
It's really funny. And I wonder if it's like, we were chatting about Australian stuff this week, like in England's got obviously your class system.
Yes.
And it's probably getting better. America, everyone wants to be Vin Diesel, right? or they want to be famous and rich, and that's a broad thing.
America has a class system.
Yeah,
though.
it does.
It's like
but it's probably
Frasier wouldn't work if it didn't.
Totally, and it's probably, you could say it's rubbish stereotypes, but that may be why they make great shows and protagonists. Whereas in Australia, I forget where I was reading it or seeing it, that if there was a dinosaur walking down the street, it's just, sorry, my arm's bleeding, sorry, Brian, but it's in the culture to sort of say, someone else will figure something, someone else will deal with that. Do you want to go see a movie later?
Right.
And then, but with
you cope too well with
and in America, they kick the table over, order the army in. Like, get me a gun. I'll figure this out.
You say all this, but I was in the cinema the other day, and there is a public service announcement film about don't punch people while they're not looking. By the way, we don't have those in the UK.
It is. It's like, if you're going to murder someone, do it from the front. Don't be a coward.
Fight fairly, as opposed to perhaps the PSA of don't fight people. It's not a good idea.
Well, it's not so proactive.
We've given up on that. There's definitely going to be fights tonight. It's just how fair they are that we're going to have to reconcile.
But I do think I'm right.
Of course you do.
But I actually do think it's there. Like England and America. You just create people who want stuff more. Like Basil Fawlty wants to be seen as high class, and so that drives him to act insane.
Oh, I mean, David Brent Brent desperately craves fame above all other things, and to the detriment of the job that he's doing.
Totally.
And if he could, his need is to let go of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that need to impress people. It's why that moment with Finchy in the Christmas special, where he finally tells him to fuck off,
and that's the end of the show.
And that's kind of reconciled that character. So I don't know what the movie's going to be about, but it
would be funny.
They've reconciled that character, because his thing is, oh no, I want Finchy's approval. He wants that approval, he wants that fame, he wants people who he thinks are better than him to think better of him.
And it's probably, I think that's totally like Suits, for instance. That one's about a guy who's sort of slightly street, wants to be a lawyer. He wants to be up there. And I wonder if that's a little bit part of Australia, as well as maybe not having a massive industry where we can be part of writers' rooms, where we can suddenly sit in a writer's room with Conan O'Brien and all these amazing writers, and that makes sense. That suddenly you've learned everything through osmosis.
Right.
That I wonder if that feeds that of not being so willful and not being so wanting. But what would you say? So would you have a clear answer? Would you already have? But it's sort of a summation of what you think is the protagonist in that. Like what their wants and needs need to be at odds with each other.
Irreconcilable. Like, and also you build an irony into your premise. So Basil shouldn't be running a hotel. Basil would be a good protagonist in any sitcom. Like if he was running a holiday camp, or if he was working in a factory, or there's no place you can put him where he wouldn't be funny. It's just that the hotel's the absolute best, because it keeps bringing the public right to his face.
That's right,
all the time.
And it's a massive thing for me, exactly what you said. Like, I probably a while ago would have thought of shows from a logline point of view. And in the last bit of time, it's thinking of it from a character point of view, and everything flows. If you come up with Mulder, he could have almost fit anywhere. It's just it had that little pop sugar of X-Files.
It's really important with sitcom, I think, that your character almost is your precinct. Your character is the setting.
Yeah.
Because people go, oh man, what about a sitcom set in a chip shop?
Yeah.
That's not the thing about it. It's what kind of guy works in that chip shop.
Totally. Pauline Hanson here. She's a character that's been like dynamic here. She's somebody who wants Australia to be old-fashioned Australian values, doesn't love multiculturalism and stuff like that. She works at a fish shop, which you couldn't be more This is Australia.
Right. Yeah,
and it's totally right. Like, how does your character feel allergic to your logline?
Populate. Then after that, populating the show, populating the half hour, so that you've got. Because I always say there's a truism that does the rounds in the UK quite a lot, which is that comedy is based on conflict. Comedy comes from conflict. I think that's an oversimplification, or rather, it's a step too far. I think comedy comes from difference. The friends in Friends aren't in conflict all day, every day. That's not what's going on. But they never feel the same about a particular situation. They never feel like they all have a different view on what dating is. It's why that storify that I've got of tweets about 7 lines from Friends.
Yeah, Andrew does a great storify, which you'll probably explain.
The first 7 lines of the pilot of Friends, which is 4 of them in Central Perk talking, and at the end of 7 lines of dialogue, you know who 4 of the regular characters are of the show. Like you're really tuned in to how Phoebe, Monica, Ross and Joey operate, and it's because you give them one topic to talk about. You give them dating, and Joey's like, I mean, dating always goes really well. Like, that's just the thing where you get together and you have sex. And for Chandler, it's the kind of evening where you get together and don't have sex.
Yeah, it's like your elevator. It's like, what does everybody think of a date?
Yeah,
and you get all the friends' reactions from that.
Absolutely, and you want to make sure that either they're different and that's not a hard and nothing is a hard and fast rule. Anything that I say, you can completely object to and ignore. But one of the things that Seinfeld proved is that you can have 3 protagonists who are basically the same character, plus a funny guy who runs in every so often, shouts something amusing, and then disappears again. Those 3 characters are basically little Larry Davids. They all go to the same kind of things. Any one of them could almost be moved across to the other's stories. Yeah. But the trick is to give them all separate stories. The best bits of Seinfeld are mostly those stories developing and growing and moving. Yeah. When they come together in a room, they mostly go a little bit of, can you believe what he just did? Yeah, I can't believe what he just did. But for the most part, it's that thing of 3 separate stories. The West Wing does the same thing. A lot of very high Ivy League white guys who go off and separately have arguments on behalf of their government and come back in again. So it's that thing of I'm sorry, I've done a thing.
Was I going to say something and you was going to say something?
Oh man! Once you switch me on, I just keep going. You have to.
I'll sit.
God, put the brakes on me.
So that's about the protagonist of sitcom. What would you think? I mean, this is a really sort of BuzzFeed question. What would you say are some do's and don'ts of sitcom script writing? Like, to cut to
write them good and do not write them good.
But I would love to know. Like, you've gone through these amazing sitcoms. What are some? Because I know that's instead of asking for the cake, I just say give me the sugar.
Proactive stuff is really important. Don't tell boring stories. Don't think that. Oh, well, there's a story where the snake gets loose, and then at the end we'll catch the snake. That's not a story yet. That's not a narrative. That's just, if it's just an excuse to do, my characters will be scared for 22 minutes. This is brilliant. I can do all my characters are scared jokes. Yeah, but your audience are going to get so far ahead of that and so bored. Yeah. Like, you want story turns, you want movement. Learn to surprise your audience. If you're not surprised by if you can't kind of trick yourself into being surprised by your own writing ever, somehow your scripts are going to feel just a little bit slower and flatter.
And you may have answered this, but like when we're sort of in our rooms late at night, is there a cool way to test characters? Is there some questions that are great to ask to test not only characters but like your sitcom logline? Is there some cool?
I don't think I've ever sat and written a logline in my life.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But no, I mean the elevator test is good. What you want actually, and we'll come to Outsiders, I'm sure, but one of the things you find is I just want any combination of my main recurring characters to be interesting. Yeah. If there's a thing where actually if you put this guy and that girl together in a room, they're perfectly reasonable with each other, you haven't given yourself anything. You want a set of people who, you look at Frasier, if you put Frasier and Niles together, that scene gets funny. If you put Niles and Roz together, there's this weird antagonism. Yeah. If you put his dad together with Frasier, you get something. If you put the dad and Daphne together, you get something. Yeah. Niles and Daphne gives you something. If every single connection means, oh yeah, they'll be, I know how to write 3 funny lines for them without them even starting to roll on a story.
That's really interesting. So like part of like the sitcoms would be your characters are rubber bands. They return to where they were at the start of the sitcom. But I wonder with Netflix and things like that would I watch 100 episodes of Seinfeld, or do I want to see Seinfeld have his stand-up career succeed
a bit?
Isn't it?
The shape of telly now is so odd. Like, there was a little while ago I would have said and I do still say, I hate premise pilots. I hate half-hour pilots of sitcoms that are nothing like the sitcom that follows. Like, you get to the end of the episode and it's like, oh my God, the group's all together. They'll be really interesting next week.
That's right. So everyone arrives at MASH at the end of the
Yeah.
episode. The community sits at the table at the end and
Community's
says,
a very
"We're
frustrating
ready."
pilot. Like,
Yeah,
I love Community
yeah.
to death, but that pilot drives me crazy because it's not about that group around a table.
Yeah, that was one of your great notes, which is about pilots and sitcoms, was that it is, you can't sort of have the end of it be our sitcom's beginning,
Yeah.
which it's really tempting to do, and which I did, I think, in the first draft.
Because
I
it's
sent
a
you.
free story. It's like a movie. You're like, wow, this is great because I know where I've got to get them.
Yeah, it's
And so
almost
you-
irrelevant to the rest of it.
Yeah, but it's not the show you're trying to make. The one thing it's definitely not is like any other episode that will follow it.
Yeah.
So no, I dislike premise pilots. But if you have to have, if you've got a lot of shoring up to do, if you've got a lot of complicated setup,
Yeah.
but still try and get it into the first half of your first episode. So the second half of your first episode is somewhat representative of what the show will be. Again, the Friends pilot's really good for this. It does throw in Rachel. It does say, and Rachel has joined the group, and thus the show is ready to start, which is fine. But Monica's doing a completely normal Friends dating storyline, and Ross is doing a I'm miserable about my divorce, which he'd do a whole season of.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to like, hang on everybody, we're not a team yet. We can't start this program. You want to get it rolling. You want to prove the premise.
That was a great thing from the I was learning. By page 5, hopefully you've got your structure set up of how everything's going to operate.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. Like, yeah, exactly what you said. Like, premise pilots.
There's a thing people say in the UK of like, well, try and write your second episode first. Just skip that stuff and get straight to the second episode. And it's like, well, if I didn't write the first episode, that doesn't necessarily. Like, I need to know how they got together and joined up.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think like you're gonna have to write the pilot for free for yourself and not tell anyone you ever wrote it, and then write the next episode, and that'll be the really good one.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the Netflix and the nature of streaming, the way telly is now, it used to be the case that you would go, why aren't you just writing the show already underway? Given that most people watch live TV, they're going to tune in for episode 4 and go, oh, this is good, and stick with it. They're not going to be able to go back and watch episode 1. Well, it's the 21st century now, and everyone goes back and says, well, I saw 5 minutes of it, it seemed quite good, so I went online and watched the first episode and started where it's
Which is why I wonder what will happen with sitcoms in that regard. If everything goes to SVOD, will people be happy to watch 20 episodes of sitcom in one night? It goes back.
I think that goes back to surprise and energy and stuff. Like, you only have to look at Arrested Development and Community are two shows that are absolutely built for not just watching but rewatching. The energy of those. There's a real willingness to go, yeah, you get it, right? You know what this is. I don't need to do another 4 scenes like labouring how sad it is to be broken up with. We can get straight into the next thing. And in fact, I won't even have the dialogue. I'll just give a voiceover that goes quickly. Anyway, he was feeling really sad about that, and then this happened. Well, usually that's a half page right there of you like, I am sad, and then a thing happens.
Well, so jumping from script editing to writing, you're writing your own series with Channel 4 at the moment. What is there anything you've learned from script editing that you took into writing?
Man, so much. This is Outsiders, which was made for Channel 4, and it's
on YouTube at the moment.
It's on
you
YouTube.
Can check it out. I'm sure we'll chuck it in under some sort of link here, eventually.
Yeah, can we just force people if they browse it?
Yeah, just one.
Because we need the hits.
But what have but is there anything you've taken from script editing that you sort of shortcuts you've learned that we could steal from you without going through your life?
Like, I'm massively obsessed with this character difference thing, and some of that comes from working on Red Dwarf, because Red Dwarf's really a four-hander now. It's got a very clear pair of leads in Rimmer and Lister, and then the Cat and Crichton are definitely secondary characters to those two, but certainly Crichton can take the lead a bit, but for the most part they're the heart of it. But you look at how, and it was never deliberate, it wasn't technically built this way beyond a basic understanding of good comedy ideas from the guys who created the show. But Rimmer and Lister sit as wonderful absolute opposites. The guy who absolutely can't be bothered and will put a lot of effort into not bothering, versus the guy who considers the rules and regulations really important. The neat one versus the slob, and the organised one versus the guy who's like, whatever happens, you know. And then you've got Crichton and the Cat, and if Crichton is guilt personified, if he's like, I will do anything for you, I will obey everything that you ask me to do, and I'll try and be generous in all the things that I do, the Cat's got no interest in any of that. What, you wanted me to pick that thing up? Oh, it's all the way over there. I'm going, I can't be asked with this. You know, there's a real, there's a diagram you could draw of the characters in Red Dwarf, of the direct oppositions and how that functions, and that's really useful. Graham Linehan's God, that really is the anecdote test. Those phone calls have taught me so much about, like, look, learn to blow through the story. If you can't tell it to somebody else and get them interested, then it's probably not a good enough story, no matter how fun the character dialogue is going to be.
And it can take you, took years from a feature anyway to get to that anecdote story to feel comfortable enough to talk it through.
So I do think that's the one that, like Hollywood screenwriters have learnt pitchability. Like they've learnt to not just, you don't email in your story outline. What you do is you go into the room and you say, I've got a killer story, let me tell you about it. Yeah. I do think that's a really good, like, prove it. Go on then, prove it. Because if I'm sat right here and if you bore me, then we're done.
There's a really cool guy that I like, well, debatably, people have got different opinions about him. But Max Landis does amazing YouTube pitches of shows, features and shows, which
he's Hollywood built, isn't he?
You should check them out. They're just, you would pay him afterwards. You'd say, I want to see this. And it's really fascinating. And it almost feels there's a total difference to that and writing. It really feels like your difference on selling.
Well, and there shouldn't be, maybe. That's maybe the thing, is that we treat writing like this isolated, go away and live in a hole art. But actually because we've been doing 2 weeks of kind of
story
work
rooms.
Projects and whatever. And the idea of somebody having the thought and someone else batting it back, and you get to the solutions to story problems, and you get to thicker characters so much quicker. Yeah, having a collaborator there just speeds everything up.
And it sounds like you guys don't have it in UK much either. Story rooms, like it sounds like something the US do that Australia doesn't, and it's mostly for budget reasons. And like, once everybody, you can definitely get. I think we're okay because. Right now I'm okay because we have friends who don't necessarily have families yet who can come in for and you can it's the money. It is the money. I hate saying that, but it is. It's just that doesn't can't afford it. Like, is it 20 people in community and Parks and Rec, and
even it doesn't. Like, there's no production in the UK that will go like, well, we'll lock 12 of you in a room for 8 weeks and pay you a full-time salary for all of that, for the 6 scripts that you will deliver. It's just never going to happen. So instead, writers are given the assignment and they're sent away to write it. They're given a script editor, they're given, help and all the rest of it. But there's a reason why Stephen Moffat keeps having to do the rewrites on Doctor Who after a while. It's because they have to go away and work on it and then bring it back and go away and work and bring it back. And we isolate writers that way. And it's not that you can't get amazing, beautiful art out of the process, but it's in doing that. But sometimes I think what you miss is just like expediency and great ideas and changes that happen faster. Like, oh God, when you get to a third draft and you realise you're just finally getting what the first draft was supposed to be about, you'd have got there so much faster if you'd have sat in the room and said, right, before I write this first draft, what does everyone think? And you can filter, you can take those, ignore them or take those ideas on board, but at least you've sounded it out and tested it.
Do you know what I'd love to talk about, which is an extension of that? It's a slight pivot, is studio sitcoms.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, in Australia, we had Hey Dad.
Right.
And
I have no idea. Is it good? I don't know.
Mother and Son was a studio sitcom. I think it was, wasn't it? And these people who created that are now like Luke Skywalker. Like they live in Bondi Beach in a house, and there are sometimes people they talk to the radio. And I've heard commissioning editors of comedy talk about, we just haven't done it. I think we had what's the one with? We had one with that guy who looks sort of like John Farnham, but not. He's always in Pirates of Penzance. Altogether now. And so we've had them. That's really interesting. But we've had them. And it sounds like in the UK, Graham is your sort of shining light, who also learned from a mentor as well. But I wonder if that's something that's like in a library, those books are lost now.
Well, you know what happened? You know exactly what I think happened because I've told you this.
Well, I actually didn't. I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, I mean, that is very typical of the last week and a half. There was a thing happening in the 90s, certainly in the UK. British audience sitcom was getting really bloody interesting. We were doing Red Dwarf, which was doing sci-fi stuff and explosions, and also lighting it with dark corners and stuff, not the flood lighting that you usually get with a studio audience sitcom, special effects and all this other stuff, playing a science fiction reality in front of a live studio audience. You had I'm Alan Partridge, which was doing four-wall sets and handheld cameras and a roof, a ceiling on the thing. So it didn't look like a studio at all. It looked like you'd gone to a travel tavern and filmed. And the naturalism of that, and the fact that they would let it kind of be a bit raw and let him improvise a bit and the thing. And then we had Coupling, which is a much more sort of proscenium, forward-facing show. But it was doing things like, let's do an episode where there's a split screen and we see what the girls are doing versus what the guys are doing. We'll do the entire episode in split screen live in front of the studio audience.
It almost started to do what Community did, but with like playing with the genre of single camera. With sitcoms, or studio sitcoms.
All that kind of technique, all that really ballsy new ways of trying to do.
Yeah.
And you thought, oh my God, I mean, the next 10 years of studio audience sitcom is just going to be amazing. Because if this is the things that we're trying now, imagine Drop the Dead Donkey was on and it was shooting it almost documentary style with peering between two monitors to get a shot.
Yeah.
So it always felt tight and busy, the set of Drop the Dead Donkey. And instead of that, The Office happened. And The Office said single camera is the best thing in the universe and it's the way to do all comedy. And nothing wrong with The Office. The Office is amazing. But its influence on commissioning was an absolute disaster, I think.
Did studio sitcoms stop for a bit?
Almost completely. Like there's a decade period where there's very few of them being made at all. And then when they come back, we're lacking directors who have any experience doing it. We're lacking writers who've had a chance to write for any of them before. We're lacking actors in some cases, because instead of pulling from theatre, they've done soaps and they've done TV and they've done, so there's not that, so they're nervous of a live studio audience and don't necessarily want to have that pressure of like, you have to get the line right the first time or the joke dies.
Or you rewrite it until it's good.
Yeah, all that. So all that training ground, it's what you said, the books are missing from the library. That training ground is gone. So when studio audience sitcom has come back now with Miranda, which is a good example of the show, and with other shows like...
well, you have that crazy big one,
Mrs. Brown's Boys and Citizen Khan, but they're all done the same. They're all done with this floodlit set, with everyone directing their dialogue in that direction as loud as possible. Joke.
Yeah.
There's a real sense of, is this how we do this? And it even feels like, and I might be completely wrong about this, that nobody's paying attention, or at least they're paying the wrong attention to how the laugh track works. One of the things that Graham does quite a lot is pull laughs off, because he knows the audience are too hyped up. He knows that they turned up really excited to see the show. So when the Moss walks into the IT crowd and says, "Good morning," it gets a laugh, and there's no reason it should have got a laugh. He's just him behaving like he does with his own voice.
Shut up, all of you.
And it means that the audience at home sit there watching this going, what the hell's funny about that? And all of a sudden, you're at odds with the show. It's like watching I found this with, this is a terrible example, but I found this with the Warcraft movie, that I wasn't sold. Which was a sitcom. Which I wasn't sold enough on, like, the stakes and characters a lot of the time. So when the score went, "This is a huge triumphant moment," I went, it's not though, is it really? Like, he just got on a horse. Like, it's not really, it didn't, and that means I'm at odds with the movie I'm watching. And the nature of a laugh track is like the nature of score. It's supposed to involve, we're supposed to be in tune with it. We're supposed to be in sync with that. It's not to tell you where the jokes are, it's to say, no, it's okay, we're all in this together.
It's really funny, because I think what happened, I maybe hear a little bit, it's that we grew up on Spielberg and all that sort of stuff, and then we got access to 5Ds, and we could suddenly say, like, we don't need jokes, this will be all about tone, which I did. It's like, I can do this.
Put the godlight in everything.
Yeah, shut up everyone, like, this is, you don't get what I'm doing. And it's all about, you want to do a comedy, but you want to do Spielberg as well, and like, I wonder how, what can we do to find, because I love studio sitcoms. Like, where could you go? Like, did Graham learn from an old...
Well, Graham was...
amazing mentor, didn't he? He had somebody for Father Ted, I forget his name.
Jeffrey Perkins was his producer. Jeffrey Perkins is a legend.
He's like the godfather of that. And I don't know...
I was never happier. Graham compared me to him once, and I went home and went...
Oh, okay.
Jeffrey Perkins was a legend of British TV comedy.
People said I looked like Pacey Witter once, by the way.
Oh, that's pretty cool too.
But that's so he learnt from him.
Partly. But you know, Graham's also grew up on studio audience sitcom. If you don't grow up watching a thing, if you're not exposed to it on a regular basis, I mean, everyone who's watching studio audience sitcom from the UK and actually mostly from the US too. What they're watching is this very brightly lit, you know, even the Big Bang Theory is essentially, you know, floodlight the hell out of the set and let them do all their jokes quite big and forward. There used to be naturalism, and I feel like now if you suggest anything naturalistic, like Roseanne had brilliant naturalistic, the family in crisis scenes.
Is so great.
The children going through heartbreaks, and they do it in front of the live studio audience. One of my favourite moments in Roseanne is I think it's in the first season, Roseanne and Dan have a blazing row in the front room without basically any jokes in it
Dead
at all.
silence as well. You can
Dead
hear a pin
silence,
drop.
the audience. And that's amazing. Like, the loudest thing in that room is the audience not daring to react because these two huge people are going at each other. It's kind of frightening and intimidating.
Yeah.
What an amazing bit of atmosphere to convey to an audience at home.
So like, how can we find that? Is it just watching it and trying it? Like I know from conversations that Australian commissioners want that back. Like they were huge. Hey Dad was huge.
Yeah.
Like all our sitcoms were massive.
I do think there's a guy called James Carey in the UK who's a big sitcom fan. He tweets under Sitcom Geek, and he just very quietly puts out the ratings for all the comedy shows every week, just the top 10 comedy shows in the UK, and it's like, oh, not huge numbers there for any of those. And studio audience sitcoms, and even classic ones like Dad's Army or something, go straight to the top of the list every time.
People love them.
There is something about them that makes more people pull together at once, and I don't know quite what that is, but I know it's worth emulating.
I think so too, because like maybe like I think those shows are great, like The Big Bang Theory and stuff like that. But maybe there's a slight allergic reaction to. I don't do broad, big comedy Bang Theory, but then you have a look at like Father Ted, and you look like, or like the shows you mentioned.
Yeah, Father Ted's really like
just as
innovative. Like they'll do really good cut-to jokes.
No, there's no Urkel in those shows. There is, but it's their own version of Urkel.
Yeah.
And it's a weird comparison. But yeah, so what would you have any advice?
I want to beg, I mean, this is my personal agenda. This isn't necessarily what's good for your careers, but I desperately want people to write and pitch innovative studio sitcom.
Yeah.
Like when you
I've heard that exact thing from commissioners here.
Well, then that is definitely, it's good for your careers. I was right all along. It's what I said. It would be really good for them if they did this. The idea that you can say, look, there's a reason this had a studio audience, and this is it, and this is why it'll be more. So because if you pitched Roseanne now, it's an intimate family thing, and so when somebody gets home or a fight breaks out, you would definitely get a pushback from UK channels saying, I don't get why it would have a studio audience then. Like, why wouldn't you want the thing to feel natural? And some of this is technical as well. Like, some of this is about finding directors to go with your pitch. You say, look, I know it says studio audience, but we're not going to light it like that. We're not going to shoot it with the video style cameras. We're going to be able to get the cameras right in up and close. Like I say, Drop the Dead Donkey used to do this beautifully. You'd almost not know that there was a studio audience thing going on there, except for the laugh track and the way it alters the performances, which is the upside. The downside is it makes your telly look cheap. Like we used to shoot Doctor Who like a sitcom, right? Multi-camera, 3 walls, floodlight it just so you can get on to the next thing. It used to be about expediency. Now, studio audience sitcom is the most expensive form of sitcom to make because you actually have to hire a studio and you have to have rehearsal days because you can only get it once. You have insurance for the audience to come. You have to have a ticketing firm to come and do all of that. Build sets. It's much cheaper to go out to somebody's flat you've borrowed for a week, quickly slap some posters up and bring the actors in and shoot that stuff with handhelds. So of course it's cheaper. So there's got to be a really good reason for the audience there, but it's what it does to performances. It's what it does to the intensity of the thing and the rhythms of the thing. But you have to have a better reason than just I want to. You have to earn it somehow now, I think, in the pitch. And that's the trick, is a bit of innovation, a bit of, no, this isn't just going back to an old style of sitcom. This is about taking the studio audience sitcom one step further and doing something really innovative. And I'd love to say what that is, but I don't know, because if I did, I'd be doing it.
Yeah. I would say the last thing we did, which was massive as well, was Thank God You're Here, which was sort of close to a sitcom, which was I'm very interested in that. I'd love to talk forever about it. The other thing, I don't know what if you have any big thoughts on this or not, but is there any genre that you think relies more on execution than comedy, if we're talking about comedy for a second? Like,
comedy's really rough because comedy's completely binary. Like, the audience know whether they found a thing funny or not. Like, that wasn't, and that's it, you're done. Like, dramas don't have that. Like, a scene where she answers the phone and she gets some bad news and she feels quite bad about the news that she's got. Well, now you have conveyed information, and that's all that scene needed to do. I understood the information. I guess that has functioned adequately. You didn't get a big laugh out of it. It doesn't matter. Weren't you supposed to? Do you feel sad? Well, it is a drama. Was it dramatic enough? Nobody asks, was it dramatic enough that moment? Comedy, it's like, and the worst thing is failure, because if you throw a punchline out there and it dies, as I have already done several times today, then...
Boy, do I know what that's about.
Right? You feel it. Like, you feel... and you... You almost feel bad for the show as well. Like even if you wanted to like a show, if they throw out a punchline that just sinks, you go, oh yeah, I mean you tried, but.
Because I know you're saying that you're a bit of your advice to sort of, I read a lot of scripts, and I guess it's each to their own, as always. You were saying before, but you were saying you should watch. Yeah. You should watch it because it's you don't get what was great about it.
I think when writers started giving out the advice, you've got to read a lot of scripts, you've got to see a lot of stuff that's get written. I feel like what they meant was you need to know how to format these things properly and stop putting them in comics' hands. Yeah. Like, I badly need you to know how to describe, like, Graham uses the example, an undercover policeman walked down the street. Well, how would you know? How would you know that he was?
Yeah.
Because he's not wearing a uniform. Was that not clear? I feel like the entire room's like, yeah, that seems like a good opening. You can't know. He's walking down the street thinking about how his wife just left him. Like, if you've put any of that stuff in the description, obviously, early writers need to get all that crap out of their system. They need to get all that bad technique out of the system, and reading scripts is useful for that. Beyond that, the script isn't a finished thing. The script is not the thing everyone was meant to see. The script is the unfortunate document we have to produce in order to make television out of it, in order to make a movie out of it. Yeah. It's a compromised thing. It is missing loads, but it's the sketch that gets you. The script page is mostly white, right? It's it's not like a novel. It's not thick, dense stuff that you're supposed to. You publish a novel, that's the thing you were supposed to experience, was all the words on the page exactly as they were. What I want is an actor delivering that line better, because on the page it just sits there, but he's going to liven it up. He's going to, do something interesting with it. I'm the script editor who hates scripts and just thinks that it's like being a fan of architecture and going to look at blueprints instead of going to look at buildings, What shows? Because when they edited the show, they cut out all that stuff that was superfluous. They cut out that entire bit where you segued off the point of the story to have a 4-minute conversation because you thought that conversation would be hysterically funny. Yeah. But it turns out that when you watched it in the run of the episode, you're like, I'm so invested in this story right now. What the hell is this guy talking about? Yeah. You need to know what works, and the best way to know that is to look at the good TV shows that got all the way through the process and out the other side. Yeah. Like, there's no point looking at a Parks and Rec script that's 50 pages long because they threw in all the gags and tried everything. You need the 20-minute version. You need the show that they actually broadcast. Yeah, that works.
You do get lost in that. You totally get lost in that because I read a lot of scripts. And that's something that it is because some it's just they're not comparable to each other. Yeah. Like you look at South Park, it's something like 70 pages. Yeah. You can never hand something like that in. Same with Parks and Rec, some are 18 pages. Right. And it's really tough, like, to go out there and read script. I think it helps, but I think you're totally right to
like I said, I think the advice came out of technique, instruction, whereas what we're really talking about is good storytelling and good character establishment. Yeah. And good, how do you give a character one line and know exactly who they are? Like, there's the Nighty Night line where the husband, right at the beginning of Nighty Night, the husband gets the news that he's got cancer, and the wife sat next to him says, "Why does it always happen to me?" Yeah. Like, I know who she is now. I've got a really clear idea of how she functions in any given setting with one line. Yeah. And that stuff's really important. And that you can get that off the page, probably, but you'll get that from watching the show.
I remember doing sort of my first show that there was a lot of, which I didn't realize now, but maybe a bit of testing, like, are you going to blow up? How are you to work with? Mm-hmm. And maybe it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure it was. And I wonder what your version of, like, a golden retriever is. Like, I wonder if you're going to the dog shop, like, what do you look for in a writer? Because
I mean, a good writer is absolutely flexible to notes, not because they need to. Okay. I've lost my thread.
I'm so sorry.
A good writer will be flexible enough to know that you can't get it perfect on the first pass or even the second pass. It's an incremental process of improvement. But how to take a note, like as a young writer, you get rejected a lot. You get the rejection letters a lot. You get told that this doesn't really work for us, when what they really mean is we think you suck, and it doesn't matter if they really meant that or not. That's what you read when you read the letter. Yeah. All that rejection, all that stuff. So you get tougher, right? You build a hardened skin around yourself. So you go, no, I can keep doing this because I really do think I have some skill here. I do have some talent. And sooner or later, I'll figure this out. And you keep going. And eventually, you've got like a suit of armor on which protects you from all the shit. But you finally write something that's quite good, and you get it to the right production company, you get it to the right channel, you get it to a producer, you get it to whoever, and they invite you in, and they say, this is great, we're going to put this into development, we think. We'd like to kick it around with you a bit, though, because, for example, that third act doesn't work. And you go, I didn't hear that, sorry, I'm wearing my suit of armor, and actually my third act's awesome, because everyone I've ever... I've been rejected too many times, and now you've told me I'm great, and that's all I heard. A way of making that armor porous is the really important thing. How do you let notes back in once you've toughened up enough to deal with the criticism in the first place? So a writer who knows how to let the notes in and not let them hurt them, because in the right circumstances, certainly for me, I'm your script editor, I'm on your side. My job is to get you to the best version of the thing you're already trying to write. It's not to tell you, I mean, I don't think we should be making this show at all, to be honest. I've got a better show in my pocket that really we ought to have a go on. Like, you can't trust a script editor who you sense is going to behave that way. In the same way, that's where you get the channel where you're like, well, they commissioned this thing, but what they really wanted is this thing. And how many times are they going to give you notes to try and swerve you there before they just tell you outright, no, what we really meant was...
That's totally right, because I think that's what I realised with Anthony, who's here, and the story producers with Strange Claws and script editors, was that it's your job as a writer to make whatever verb they say is not good better. Like that's where your craft comes in. Like it is really hard. You have to be half Superman, half a lamb, because you have to really take it and then.
You have to be bent flexible, you have to be amenable. And there's also the thing of reading, writers who get that the notes have different meanings depending on who sent them. Like there are people who will tell you, I mean, it'd be good if there was a dog. Is there a dog in it? We could have room for a dog. What they mean is I don't care about any of the characters. If there was a dog, at least I'd like the dog. Like you have to learn to translate the notes, because sometimes they come with an agenda, and sometimes it's, you know, my cousin really wants a part in a sitcom, so you have to run it through the translator. Now the hope is with my notes, you don't have to run them through the translator. And if you do, some of it, because sometimes it will be subjective. Like I've given notes to write absolutely to all of the best writers I've ever worked with, where I've said that joke just ain't landing for me at all, like that doesn't pay, and they've let it go, and they've left it in, and too often it's got a huge laugh. And that's that thing of, well, that's because Andrew's sense of humor isn't quite the same as what I know absolutely definitely worked. It's really important to look at the context of the note that you get. So writers who hear you but don't put up the barriers straight away, who take it home and let it simmer and let it whatever, but also who run it through the translator and fix the problem that you had. Because sometimes the people who give you notes, they don't know what their actual problem was. They just know that they're bored in the middle, but they didn't write I'm bored in the middle. They went, wouldn't it be interesting if like something was on fire? It would be interesting, but it wouldn't actually solve anything. But your job isn't to add fire; it's to make sure that middle section's interesting. It's the same with the word likable. When people give you the note, I don't know how likable this character is. What they mean is, I don't get why they do things, because understandable is usually the solution to likable. We like House, we like Blackadder, we like Complete Bastards, we like David Brent. But it's not because they're likable. It's not because they come in and they give flowers to people and are nice. It's because you totally get where they're coming from. That's really interesting. I think it's just about to go to sort of chat a few questions. But that's something that sort of learnt from working with you, is that a big thing is like if you're a writer, comedy specifically, you can come up with jokes pretty easily, and you can go, you know what, it'll be funny to make sure he falls off the boat and gets to the boat, but it's really earning that, why is he on the boat to begin with, and if you can earn that. Don't confuse people. You know, that's the thing we've been saying a lot, is you'd laugh so much harder if you know what's going on. If you understand he wants that, she wants that, they're trying to do this, then you can get a laugh. If something weird happens, somebody falls over, you go, I don't even get why they fell over. You don't laugh. If you've set up the dog walking around the scene, but it's very small and nobody notices the dog, and the other person's not paying attention because they're ranting about a thing, when they go over it, you get a better laugh out of it because you get how it happened. But you didn't know it was coming until the second it did. Did you want to chat about questions? With
Hello everyone. So because this is live streamed, even though this isn't amplifying my voice, it's just so that people at home can hear. So when we ask questions, please just put your hand up and I'm speaking to the microphone.
Is there anyone
even
still
though it does
online?
Nothing.
Is there anyone there still? Are they even looking? Have they all switched off? All right.
Hello, hundreds.
There are not hundreds.
There might be.
There might be.
Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, cool.
Thank God.
Here we go.
Just to go back to character and active protagonists, in a world where you've got a bunch of crazy, wacky characters, is it essential to have one of the characters there that is understanding how wacky and crazy, sort of like Tim from The Office?
That's a really good point.
And Jason Bateman from Arrested Development. They've got their own problems themselves. But
I absolutely think there's it's what I call the true north. Like a character in your show who tells you where north is while all the other compass points are flickery, weird and uncertain. Absolutely fabulous. Only functions because Safi and the grandma are in the kitchen. If you take those two away, it's a show about insane people behaving insanely all the time. And you genuinely don't know, is the world of the sitcom insane, or is it just these people, and that actually if they stopped at a petrol station, they would get looked at like they're weird? Safi gives you that. Safi says, oh God, these people. It makes it specific to them. In the same ways, Tim in The Office gives you a certain measure of that. Those are really good examples. Jason Bateman's an interesting one because they have to work quite hard, I think, with had to work quite hard with Arrested Development to make Jason Bateman not just an everyman. And the best things are when, he's got a crush on somebody that his son's also got a crush on or something. Like when he's venal and selfish, Michael really starts to come alive. It's too easy for him to be the everyman in scenes. And I feel like you feel the show fighting that all the time. But you're right, you do need someone that tells you the family are like this rather than everyone in the sitcom world of Arrested Development is this stupid rich kind of person. It's really important to tune you in. Yeah, I think that's useful. And you end up fighting that everyman role quite hard. And the way you make Safi in the kitchen funny, the way you make sure that actually her dullness and her specificity and her awkwardness, the way you make those funny somehow is really important to making sure that character isn't just a comedy sinkhole. That as soon as you get in there, the energy just goes out of the show. Actually, no, the energy goes up because the contrast between her and her mum is really exciting.
It's a really good question. How do you reconcile that, your everyman, with making sure your character is active? Like how do you make them not just say this is an absurd thing happening next to me?
Actually, Arrested Development is one thing, and AbFab is another. AbFab, the useful thing is that although Safi wants certain things, she wants to be able to do her homework in peace. She wants to be able to get on with her life. For the most part, she's not driving the narratives of those episodes. Okay. Whereas Arrested Development, Michael is absolutely driving that show. Yeah. He's always got one of the A plots. I don't think there's a single episode where he hasn't.
Yeah.
And it's about making him malcontent. And the nice thing about Arrested Development is I don't want to be babysitting my family anymore. Yeah. The week-on-week thing is I would very much like it if my son and I could go away and live somewhere and not have to deal with this. Yeah. The intense guilt that's on him the whole time because he knows every single one of them is a child that needs babysitting. Yeah. And he has to keep coming back. His frustration, his life frustration, is what gives you that, he's going to try and get them settled, because as soon as he's got them settled, if he can just make sure his dad's snugly in prison, they've all snugly got a regular income, they're running the company, everything's fine, I can go. And he can never go because now his dad's out of prison and living in the attic.
See, that's really interesting because like that would you say he is that show feels like everyone is making insane decisions which make him push into a corner and act out. But would you say he's a character who is making decisions that cause things to happen in his life?
Part of his problem is he wants them to get better at life so that he can get away from them. Yeah. So when he says, why don't you try running the company and I'll try and keep an eye on what you're doing. Well, yeah, that's fine, except you've just put Job in front of in charge of the company. Yeah. Like his selfish need to run away has made him a decision that will definitely hurt the company for the next 3 weeks.
That's really interesting because you can then jump onto like BJ and Hawkeye from MASH. Mm-hmm. Like you're watching that, you feel like you've got patients coming in with a story of the week, and that's affecting them in some way. But it isn't. If the
patient's hot, they've got a whole other thing going on.
Yeah, it's always them making a decision based on that patient. Like we need to try and do this.
Well, or to prove a point, Henry will mistreat the patient because of his own innate horribleness. Yeah. And they're like, right, well now we have to teach him a lesson. Like we can't just let injustice stand.
So you'd almost say that these sort of like that almost
MASH is by the way, is the hardest example of a sitcom.
Why so?
Because those two guys are so close to perfect. Like they're really good surgeons. They're incredibly witty. They're terrific with women.
Yeah.
Like what's the thing about them that's flawed? And it's actually that they're stuck in a war and they're trying to treat it like it's an everyday situation. Like their need to try and reconcile the stress of what's going on with no, we're going to have martinis like it's normal. Like that's
really,
where the tension is.
That's really interesting. So you'd almost say their wants and needs are, you know, they want to treat it like this is just a holiday, but they need to realise this kids are dying around you.
And that's where it gets tough, because actually it's not that they don't realise that kids are dying.
They're ignoring it.
You know, but they don't ignore it. They absolutely go after it. But the problem is, they will fight to save the kid's life, and then they will go and tell the parent. They will go and do something about it. Like they're very active, even in their denial isn't that active a thing. Like as a once in these things, they're the hardest example to reconcile.
Yeah.
But you know, thanks for bringing it up.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Ryan has one.
I'm really interested in your process of giving notes, and what kind of separates your notes that are incisive compared to notes that are
why am I just better than everyone else?
Yeah,
what is that? What is
boil
that
it down,
exactly?
that's it.
Upbringing and diet.
And compared to notes that are more likable, or we like the dog, more of the dog.
I mean, I don't come in with any agenda. That's all. I mean, and that's all it really boils down to. I have one agenda, and that's to help you. I'm on your side. Other people aren't on your side completely. They can't be. The director absolutely has to make the thing he's got to shoot function in the shooting schedule they've got. I need to set this scene during the day because we can't afford a night shoot. That's not a gift for the writer. That's not a recommendation. That's just a production problem. The channel have marketing issues. You know, they've got things of like, well, we need to be able to sell this to the quadrants. We need to be able to tell everybody, get everybody watching this show. So they're going to try and steer you certain ways. And it's not that they don't respect the writer. It's just that they have financial considerations. And to be fair, if you went into professional TV writing, if you went into film writing, you knew what you were getting into because it's a collaborative process. The job is to work with everybody else and to know that this costs a lot of money to make this stuff. Half-hour television is a lot of money.
Yeah.
You want to be a totally respected artist who like totally gets their vision. You've got to go and write a novel. You've got to you get into telly because at its best you can get more out of your piece of writing because an actor will come and just knock it out of the park, be so much richer and better than anything you thought you had written. They said the lines you've written, but they said them in a way that just changed them up and made them so much better. Directors who just get it and find more laughs in things you didn't even realize were that funny. You know, those people who enhance the work that you're doing. That's who you want to work with. And as a script editor, my job, I want to enhance what you're doing too. I don't want to change it just to suit myself. I want to change it because I know what you want it to be. I know you want people crying at the end of Act 2, and what they are at the moment is a bit sad. So how do we generate that? How do we make sure that impacts hard enough? What can we do? I hope it's because I cut through a lot of the bullshit that I'm quite good at kind of seeing through the difference between what you're trying to do and what you've done, and the difference between what I want it to be and what you're trying to make it. And this is what you get, I think, from the tweet. When I do the tweet notes on Twitter, when I do because I'll take a movie and sort of take it apart and find out why it's not ticking when it isn't ticking. Some of the time when I've written tweet notes, somebody will reply to me and say, "I don't get it. Did you like the movie or not?" And I said, well, that's a review. That's you know, star rating and whatever. My job is not to tell you that I liked it, although I'll often throw that in. Yeah. The important thing is, why didn't that bit function? Because I was so into that movie, and then something happened, and I just fell out of it. And trying to track down those particulars, not with an agenda, not with see, I'm better than this movie because I outsmarted it. Yeah. Just so we get it, just so we all understand. And that's the thing about the tweet notes is, hopefully you look at your own stuff and you go, yeah, I need to not make those mistakes.
The best way I could explain it is that the sentence is almost a horse jumped over the fence. And Andrew and Lee as well was really great, circled the verbs that could be more emotive. And then it was like up to me to sort of say, how can I make that better? Like they didn't say, use this word, use this verb for that. It was almost like, you know that this could be better, this word could be more emotive and get more from that, and then it was up to you to go home and figure out that word. If that makes sense at all. I don't know why that makes sense in my head for some reason.
We have a question online. So that is, we're seeing a lot of new talent being identified from the shorter form online webisode style of comedy. Any thoughts for moving from that world to longer form television?
Yeah, I'd really like to.
And that's from Ellard 2016. So just
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Ellard G 2016.
Hi, Ellen, G.
Hi,
I
Ellen.
hope she wasn't born in 2016. That
She's
seems
what?
a bit early to be typing.
Yeah,
right?
she's half a year old.
Right. Because obviously I've just done, I say
Yeah.
obviously, like anyone knows,
No,
I've just done Outsiders, which is a set of, they call them comedy blaps because they're youth and very cool at Channel 4.
Yeah.
But the comedy blaps is a testing ground. It's a way of not paying for a pilot, but paying for a little bit of something to be shot to prove the concept that you wanted. And Outsiders is about a bunch of immigrants in the UK living together. And we did 3 of those. We've done 3 little mini stories, and they've gone up on YouTube. And yes, what I would dearly love is to go the next step and have that turn into a full half-hour sitcom. But the way you do that is they look at it, and they look at a few things, I guess. They probably look at whether anyone online actually enjoyed it or thought it was crap. For sure, they look at whether they think it works. If you can make me laugh and excited and interested in 5 minutes, you do hope that they go, well, they managed it in 5 minutes. I wonder what they could do with 25. You know, I absolutely think that short form is. I mean, that's where so much stuff is coming up that way now. So many broadcasts coming up that way.
Yeah.
The interesting thing will be when it tips over the other way, and YouTube or whatever, when other distribution platforms say pluck from their own, pluck from short form, and say you can be any length you want. Because even though Netflix started doing that, even though like Arrested Development, the 4th season, you can be any duration you want. And unfortunately, what Mitch Hurwitz heard was you could be 45 minutes if you really wanted to be. When actually no, 22 was really working for that show. But certainly that it is that proof of concept. Show me that this works.
What is it? The question was like, what are your thoughts on going short form to long?
Yeah, any thoughts for moving from that form, from that world to longer form television?
I mean, if you can shoot your own short form, if you can afford to do, if you can, and God knows, you know, the gear now. Like I went to university to use the broadcast quality Beta SP cameras that they had and the linear editing suite that they had, and now I can do all of that on my phone. My university is less equipped than my phone is now.
I think anything, like what Elena's saying, like anything we've done that's had any sort of success, we have made ourselves with not much interest.
And it's tough, and it's why, by the way, it's why writer-performers, sitcom and commissioning, and certainly in the UK, massively leans towards writer-performers. People who are like, well, you're so funny, I imagine if we gave you half an hour, it would be really fun. And that's because you can tell, you can taste it already. You've seen their stand-up, you've seen them on panel shows, you go, yeah, a sitcom in that kind of voice, that seems really cool to me. If you don't have access to that, and writers who are just writers, or who are just writer, director, producer, editors, music, whatever, if you don't stand in front of the camera and do your own stuff, it's much harder. And then it's about, if you're going to do short form online, cast it really good. Don't scrimp at that. Don't audition. Don't just use the first person who came along and kind of delivered the lines right. You've got to make it persuasive. Anything has to be persuasive now.
I can't imagine that I would make anything without making something before. It just informs the writing process as well as whoever's watching it to commission it. It just informs everything, and it's also it is easy. Like you can also make it hard by shooting at big budget and stuff, but you can also just shoot them at a dinner table. But also bear in mind, like
you're a director who's got good comedy timing. Not everybody who picks up a camera will have that. And if you don't have that, because the job isn't to get your words on the screen as accurately as possible. It is again to find a collaborator who will do something really cool with them. There's loads of people who are shooting stuff right now who don't write, and you see film competitions every year, short film competitions, and these directors will submit these mood pieces that they wrote themselves. They don't have a strong, interesting story. They don't have a character that you can get behind. But they do have all this mood and tone. But it's like, well, imagine if we'd found you a really good writer. And there's loads of writers who desperately want people to make their stuff.
That's really funny you say that, because I actually get asked a lot because of saying we shoot everything that ever gets picked up. I get asked a lot, should I shoot it? And I never really have a proper answer. But the other day, I think I got close to one, which is like, if the page isn't communicating fully, what, like Modern Family, I
Yeah.
imagine, would communicate what that show is
It's a
pretty
pretty-
easily.
look,
But
it's a-
something like The Office, maybe not as much.
I've actually weirdly I've read the page
Yeah.
version of the Modern Family pilot.
Yeah.
And it is really good, but you still have to be a telly person who's willing to, you know,
Yeah.
like you already have to have a slight buy-in.
Yeah.
There's no question that a script of 5 minutes is less persuasive than those characters up and running and making you laugh and making you
Yeah.
cry and making you feel things. And
Also, the really basic human instinct is nobody wants to read anything.
yeah, reading's dull. Reading's
Like
boring.
genuinely, like I don't want to read something,
Well,
but I'll click this.
Not
I'll
least
click
because
this.
every single person who has any ability to give you money for a project, allocate you funds for a project, has a pile of things
Yeah.
on their desk like this. If you're the next one, as opposed to the link with the
Yeah.
really interesting, funny, sparky first joke,
Yeah, but I actually think that window, I think the links will soon be the papers.
That's
I actually
very
think
true.
the window is going
Yeah,
pretty
that's-
quickly
yeah.
about like being the video person, and they won't have scripts.
No, that
I
is
actually think it may balance out because everyone is shooting stuff, and
Yeah,
you'll be
you're
like, I
not
can't
wrong.
watch
You're
3
not
hours
wrong.
of 5-minute videos today.
yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Phil. How you going?
Are these all your friends?
This is my family.
Because I feel a bit weird about this now.
Feels
Like,
my- this is-
you and some mates have just rigged up this very elaborate.
This is my dad.
Just wondering what you think the difference is between comedy and drama, apart from the obvious laugh
I had
quota.
that question and I skipped
That's true.
it.
You skipped it. You skipped it. I mean, it's like any show. It's how you build it. So
Because it's funny, you flip really well, like amazingly between them. We've been doing flipping from 2 days on a drama, 1 hour drama, and then back to comedy. And I haven't noticed your gear shift, but I'm sure it has in your head
yeah,
somewhere.
well, you just kind of, I don't know. I mean, some of this stuff's instinctual. I've thought less about the drama thing because
Yeah.
I ended up the sitcom guy through no particular design, but
Yeah.
and we've done a film as well. So we've done drama, film, and
Yeah, jumped around a lot.
ongoing serial drama and regular reset button sitcom, and we've been doing this one-off proper tell a story to the end
Yeah.
movie.
It's a really good question. Is there a difference?
Yeah, I don't know what. I mean, it depends what you're trying to make. Like CSI functions like almost like a sitcom does, right? Except that the main characters are the everyman who are investigating, and everyone else is weird. But it's a reset button show. Like it comes right back to like those
Yeah.
those procedurals. Columbo is a really good sitcom character, actually. But he just leaves at the end and he comes back at the start and he's exactly the same as he was. It works kind
Yeah.
of like how a sitcom does.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're obsessed with Line of Duty at the moment.
Has
you
anyone
and I.
seen Line of Duty on
British cop
Stan
show.
at the moment? It's cool.
It's
It's great. You're in
so
for a
good.
treat. It's really amazing. It's amazing. Anyway.
Anyway, and it's an ongoing serial drama, and one of the things it's really good at is a character death or a reveal of something will make you go, Jesus, this changes everything, this is amazing. And you know, in fact, if any of you are watching Game of Thrones, it's the same thing. When 3/4 of the way through an episode, or at the end of an episode, something extraordinary happens, somebody dies who you weren't expecting, you realise, well, because he's now going to go and do something completely, and she's now, who was all obsessed with this thing, she won't be able to stop thinking about that. You see the implications right away, right? You feel all the knock-ons, and I feel like that's not that different from how comedy works, which is, oh my God, I get what this means immediately, and it's so interesting. If what happens, you go, I don't know, is he going to feel good about that or bad about that? Like that's how Batman v Superman really lost me.
Yeah.
Was like in any given scene, I felt like Batman could either decide this is really important, I have to do something about it now, or screw that, I got more important things to do. Like, there's no thing where you went, man, after what I know about him and what I know about this situation, that is the only outcome this can have.
Yeah.
And that's where good farce functions through, well, I get how he made that decision, that decision, that decision, and that decision. If you didn't believe any of those choices, if you didn't buy in...
And that's about earning, like if you come up with it, and you were talking about plotting, both in dramas and comedy that we were doing, and it happened with Lee as well from a hoodlum, that it's not worrisome to come up with the end and then earn that ending.
Nope.
In fact, it's maybe even a bit better, because if you come up with the start, you suddenly fall in love with, that was really great what happened at the start, but it doesn't really earn this big ending, and it's nice to start there.
The writers' rooms that I know that are always in trouble are the ones that obsess about the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, you're so interested in like, hey, what about this brilliant world, and what about these brilliant characters, and let's get everybody up
and
and
you fall in love
talking.
with jokes or twists that
Yeah.
won't necessarily earn.
You need to be aiming somewhere all the time. Now, sometimes
Yeah.
you don't even know. Graham and I have found this a lot with Count Arthur recently, that actually he writes a start, writes an interesting middle, and then it goes off on this interesting set of tangents. He gets to this ending. He's like, well, that wasn't the ending I was planning, but that's so cool. It's got nothing to do with what the first 3 scenes were about.
And you rewrite?
And he totally changed it. He drops those first 3 scenes.
Yeah.
By the way, that willingness to drop stuff is so important. That willingness to know there's always more words, there's always more jokes.
It's funny, I've seen that throughout a lot of people, not just creative. Like,
Yeah.
I think that was all...
Well, you fall in love with these things. You work hard at them. I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things
As a good quality, to just drop.
Yeah,
you've worked on it
you've got
for
to be able to do it,
months.
and it's. I understand the desire to keep hold of stuff, but I've wandered massively from the point. But there is something about, like, if you're going to rewrite a script, open a new Final Draft document. Oh, don't use Final Draft. Use something good. Use Fade In, but use a new document and start writing it again. Because if your story passed the anecdote test, like the movie we were putting together today.
Yeah.
I can tell you now what the plot of that movie is, and it was hours ago we came up with it, and we've written bits and pieces down, but I didn't write a single thing down all day. But you realise eventually it achieves a momentum and a pace all of its own, and
Totally.
and you can repeat it to someone like a good joke. When you hear a good joke told and you're able to repeat it the next day to somebody, it's not because you memorised it, it's because the beats of it are so clean and clear. If you can do that with a story, same thing. And if you're going to rewrite, when you're going to rewrite and you've got to change big story stuff, open a new document and start typing the story. The old document's still there. It's nothing to be frightened of. You're not losing it. If you get to the end of the new version, you go, man, what was that really good pun I had? I had a great pun I just can't get to. Go and copy and paste it. It's fine. But start again. Start from... You'll rewrite harder. You'll do that fiddling thing less, where you go, yeah, just a couple of words and that joke will be completely nailed. Write another good joke. You've got more in you. If you're a professional writer, you absolutely should have more in you. There's no use ring fencing one joke. I see writers do it all the time. Ring fence one joke, put it on the page, and then rewrite the scene around it to make sure that joke stays no matter what. And it always makes the scenes weaker.
It's funny that I was watching the 6 Days to Air recently, the South Park thing, and they had a, more often than not, they come up with a joke idea, which I imagine is the same as coming up with a log line for drama. And they said it screws them because they're trying to satisfy the setup, the middle, the payoff, rather than just saying this episode Cartman wants to go to Casa Benitez. And that's it. And it just makes room for so much more joke than coming up with the ... of the joke. The other thing is I can't imagine from the last week and so with you, I think I personally will pitch into my laptop. I think I'll do a story room, I'll talk about it, I'll probably write up the beats, and then I'll pitch it into the laptop and then do it. I genuinely think I'll do that from now on. I just found that I'm informed by Your Only Love from Your Only Hate. It is from Max Landis. It's like he did it, and Walking in the Room. That combination of those two have come together.
I'm never happier than when I come downstairs and I tell I think I've nailed this, and my wife will patiently put up with. She's heard this a lot. I think I've got this one, and I'll pitch it to her, and you can see when she gets bored. I'm used to the look. It's fine. You can see, no it's my problem, it's not her problem, but you can see when you lose your audience. You can see when they've tuned out. I know, because I've talked to you for a week and it happens all the time. You can see when it happens, and that just means, all right, okay, that section, it's just got a bit and then rambly, and you see where you pick them back up, and that thing of learning to get it out of your system that way. Stephen Moffat says, and this is to prove nothing I say is a rule, nothing I say is a truth, it's just the things that I've found. He says, don't tell anybody your ideas, don't tell anybody, bottle them up and bottle them up and bottle them up, and then eventually they will, you want to blurt them out. The first time you want them out of your system is onto the page.
I totally agree with that, but I think once it's there, you should be able to pitch it back to yourself. I think it's a bit of the both worlds.
I think both versions are true.
I totally get that as well,
because
if you talk about your screw up, but I think that's almost time. But I just want to say, your Twitter,
Ellard.
Seriously, check it out. It's really great. I
in between me getting into arguments and stuff, it's really
I learned a lot from it, and that is how I first met Andrew. And it's just brilliant. And I'm so thankful you came out for these couple of weeks. I want to tell everyone to contact you, but I want Andrew all for myself. But I'm sure you will. But it's just been such a privilege to have you out here. We do feel...
If you do want to hire me, it's andrewellard.com, by the way, totally available.
But we do feel like Brisbane is like in the corner of the world. And it's just great having you in to, talk about our stuff in the same sentence of, well, Stephen Moffat did it this way, or Graham thought of it this way when we chatted. I just think there's a thing in Australia of like, that's them, this is us. And I think it's why we so easily talk badly about celebrities. It's like, we'll never meet them. It's like, and I think it's not any different. It's just been so great having you here, bringing your knowledge from UK comedy, sitcom to us. It's real privilege. Thanks,
I've really
thanks for
enjoyed
chatting about it. And I'm sure you will answer tweets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tweet me questions. I will absolutely.
Yeah, if I've
bore you
really
to
screwed
death.
up, I'm sure you'll just jump on Twitter. But thanks so much. It's been really brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.